a debt-based financial system, and I think there might be a Cambridge paper on there, certainly on the website and on your reading list, from 18 years ago, when I said that this is what tends to happen. As we've seen, debt-based systems tend to be volatile because you've got this exuberance and then crash. It engenders speculation because debts are fixed in nominal terms. That means that when a commodity like gold or stocks or house prices are rising, then you've got an incentive to borrow as much as possible, to buy it, bid up the price. But then when prices start collapsing, because your debt is fixed, you want to sell it fast so you can repay your debt. So the contractual term tends to push markets up and then bring them down much quicker than they would otherwise be. There's a misallocation of finance to those who already have collateral and therefore can get cheaper debt, cheaper credit, than those who've got good ideas. We've seen that when debts are sold and on-sold, bad decisions eventually come out. So we thought before the crisis that because loans were being packaged up and dispersed, risk was being reduced and minimized and put in places where it could be held safely. First of all, we didn't realize that those securities were actually being held by the banks in risky structures. But also we didn't realize that because you're breaking the link between the borrower and the lender, you're severing this relational link, then you've got more and more reliance on the process of lending standards holding up and monitoring and checking the quality of all these loans to continue to go on for the system to work, to maintain standards. And as you had the demand for these securities go up and up and up, lending standards had to go down in order to generate the credit to do that. When you break these relationships, it's very hard to keep lending quality up. I'm going to say that we have endemic inflation because we have a debt-based financial system. First of all, that means that it's easy for governments and central banks to create credit for banks to do that. But also because central banks can't risk the price level starting to fall. So rather than having a commodity standard where the price level fluctuates but is stable over time, we have central banks committed, as we've said, to inflation over time, because they don't want to risk inflation ever going below zero, because that means that the debts of governments, companies, mortgage borrowers start going up, and they start saving heavily because their real debts are going up, and they're worried that that leads to a downward spiral of demand, and you have Great Depression. So because we can't risk that, because we've got so much debt in the economy, we've got to keep inflating it away gradually to stop the Great Depression coming along again. Just to note, very briefly, a word of warning to the gold bugs in the room, those who advocate the going back to the gold standard because it's biblical. If you do that without taking the rest of this model seriously about debt and interest, then we will go back to 1931. You will have an indebted society, but a hard money, and something's got to give. And as in 1931, it was the gold standard that went, and we then had inflation from then on. Don't think about these, you can pick and choose from this model carelessly. It is incredibly wise in how it fits together. But also, as we saw with the low-income debt problem that was headline news Jubilee campaign 10 years ago, that we often get periods where we know indebted countries or people cannot pay, but unless we enshrine this idea that debt can be cancelled, then we know that injustice occurs. The rich do oppress and enslave the poor through debt. So, I would argue that the system